Hey guys, tonight we step onto the frozen edge of Empire. You can almost hear the crunch of boots on frost-hardened soil, feel the sting of icy air slipping under the folds of your cloak, and taste that metallic tang of winter that bites the tongue before supper. You stand not in the bustling heart of Rome, where marble temples shine in sunlight, but out here, where the frontier blurs into a hostile unknown. The wind carries no music of lyres. Only the steady moan through pine branches and the sharp snap of tents straining against rope. This was no holiday posting. Soldiers of the Empire, whether stationed in Britannia, Germania, or along the Danube, endured nights that seemed endless. You would be given rations, training, and discipline, yes, but not comfort, not warmth, not the soft embrace of a Roman villa. Instead, you face a night where even the moon looks cold, silver, and distant. There's a strange humor in it, too. Imagine traveling thousands of miles from sun-drenched Italy only to discover your new enemy is not always barbarian hordes, but frost, hunger, and sleeplessness. If you've ever complained about thin blankets in winter, know that these legionaries had worse. Their breath froze in the dark. Their hands ached from holding metal weapons chilled to stone. And yet, here they are, still alive, still enduring. The frontiers were dotted with forts and watchtowers, lonely sparks of Roman order clinging to the edges of wilderness. Each one was like a stubborn lantern in a sea of snow. Soldiers inside wrapped themselves in coarse wool, pressed close to fires, and prayed the flames would not falter. One well-known fact: legionaries on Hadrian's wall sometimes carved graffiti into the stone, leaving not just military marks but doodles, proof they had time to complain about the cold, even then. A curiosity: some records suggest soldiers tried sleeping near their horses, sharing the animal's body heat when the night was too sharp. And historians still debate whether the Empire truly supplied enough winter gear or whether soldiers relied mostly on improvisation. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, leave a comment with your location and your local time. I love seeing how far these sleepy journeys travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The snow is already falling outside the camp, and the night has only just begun. You push open the creaking door of the barack, and the sound is as sharp as the cold itself. The wood is so thin you can see the seams, splitting in places, narrow slits where the wind whistles through like a flute with too many holes. If you expected stone strongholds, forget them. Out here on the frosted edge of Empire, these walls are planks nailed together in a hurry, built for function, not for comfort. The first breath you take inside makes no difference. It is as cold within as without, and the air tastes faintly of smoke and damp straw. Soldiers are already settled along the room's length, their cloaks wrapped tightly around them. Their armor lies piled in a corner, glistening faintly as frost forms on the edges. There's no warmth here, only the faint illusion of shelter. The walls groan when the wind presses hard, as if the very structure wants to give way. You run a hand along the boards, and they feel brittle, as if a single winter more might turn them to dust. Yet soldiers have made these fragile spaces livable, if only just. Shields, the round and curved companions of every legionary, are leaned against the interior walls. Their leather faces and bronze rims transform into insulation, a shield not from spears but from the drafts that snake across the floor. You watch as a soldier adjusts his shield barrier, stacking one over another. The result looks like a child's fort, but the effect is real. The room grows a little quieter, the whistle of air dulling into a muted sigh. Better than nothing, one mutters, and the others nod without lifting their cloaks. It's a strange irony. Imagine traveling to the Empire's edge, sworn to defend civilization, only to find your most trusted protection is not the fortress wall, but the very shield you carried on campaign. The wooden barack becomes a strange hybrid of home and battlefield. Your bed a straw mat, your insulation the gear you marched with. A well-known fact drifts to mind. Roman barracks on Hadrian's Wall often held 8 men to a room. 8 breaths, steaming in the cold. 8 cloaks overlapping. 8 bodies pressed together in forced fraternity. They slept on raised platforms with straw beneath them, the walls rattling in storm winds. Archaeologists even found stone outlines of these barracks, showing just how cramped the quarters were. A curiosity surfaces, too. Some men carved figures into the softwood. Charms, doodles, maybe even jokes. One scrap of graffiti found on the frontier shows a crude caricature of a commander, drawn with exaggerated features, perhaps meant to lighten a dark night. Even thin walls, it seems, could become canvases, and historians still argue how protective these wooden walls really were. Some insist that while drafty, they at least broke the worst of the wind. Others suggest they offered little more than psychological comfort, that the soldiers endured freezing temperatures almost as if they were still intense. The debate lingers, like the drafts themselves, slipping through cracks no one could ever fully seal. You shift closer to the brazier in the room's center. Its coals glow faintly, throwing shadows up against the trembling planks. Soldiers stretch their hands over the embers, and the warmth barely reaches their fingertips. The fire makes the air smoky, thick enough to sting the eyes, but no one complains. It is better to cough in the smoke than to freeze in the clear. The barack feels alive with quiet sounds. The rustle of straw mats as men shift in their sleep. The scrape of a stylus as someone scratches a message onto a wax tablet. The faint mutter of a prayer whispered to a god who may or may not hear across such frozen distances. The barack is a box, fragile against the night, but it holds not just men, it holds their endurance. You picture yourself in this room, your back against the wall, your shield propped beside you. You listen to the timber strain under the pressure of wind and frost, and you wonder which will break first, the wood or the men inside. But then you glance at the soldier across from you, his eyes closed, his cloak drawn to his nose, his breath steady despite the cold. And you realize, men can endure more than would ever could. So the night stretches on. Thin walls creak, shields guard against invisible enemies, and you lie in a space that is neither comfortable nor truly safe. But it is Roman. It is disciplined. It is enough. The night deepens, and with it the cold sharpens. You step out of the thin-walled barack, the one where shields double as insulation, and feel the wind catch your cloak as if trying to lift you off the earth. Across the parade ground, a dozen orange halos pulse and drift. They are not grand bonfires, only stubborn braziers. But in a camp like this, they are arteries feeding warmth into numbed hands and tired hearts. You move toward one of them. Sparks jump as a soldier pokes the embers with a blackened stick. Another soldier cradles a clay brazier as if it were a newborn, turning its mouth away from the gust so the coals will not sulk and die. You crouch, joints creaking, and extend your palms. Heat reaches you in cautious waves. Never enough, always welcome. Fuel is a campaign in itself. The quartermaster's numbers may look neat on a tablet, but trees do not grow by decree. Patrols return at dusk, wearing pine needles like badges, bundles of branches strapped to their backs. Some nights they break up shattered pallets, old tent poles, even splinters from a retired ram. The Empire supplies pay, grain, and orders. You supply creativity. When the snow lies deep, you feel like an ant hauling winter on your shoulders. Someone sets an iron trivet over the brazier and balances a dented pot. Melted snow hisses, then slackens into liquid. A handful of barley goes in, a pinch of salt, a scrap of fat saved from yesterday's ration. The smell is humble and heroic at once. Steam kisses your face. The soldier beside you presses a crust to the rim, turning it carefully until the edge blackens to a smoky line. He smiles with a child's triumph. For a moment, you forget the wind. The fire calms voices. It is the oldest negotiator. Men draw closer in a ring, cloaks overlapping like scales. Stories begin because there is finally a place for them to land. One remembers a summer in Campania, grapes so sweet they seemed warm. Another jokes that this brazier is the true standard of the Legion. Whoever carries it rules the night. Laughter arrives in soft bursts. The coals settle. You listen to the quiet crackle, to the soft drum of sleet on helmet rims. A well-known fact warms the circle. Excavations at frontier forts have uncovered clay and metal braziers, soot-stained and cracked, evidence that heat was carefully managed indoors as well as outside. In rooms where 8 men slept, a raised brazier kept straw from flaring and gave just enough comfort to keep fingers from stiffening around a sword hilt. You picture those rooms now, orange islands and timber seas. Our shields still propped to slow the drafts no wall could fully stop. Curiosities make the rounds like wineskins. Someone swears that rubbing vinegar on hands keeps them from splitting. Someone else insists that garlic chewed slowly lights a candle in the belly. A veteran claims that if you warm a pebble by the coals and hold it in your fist as you fall asleep, the heat will climb your arm and trick the blood toward your heart. Another man says his mother once set a brazier under a chair and called it a throne. He sat all winter and never felt prouder. You nod, imagining the chair throne. Historians still argue whether fires were rationed by strict order or by custom, whether every Cantabrium received its own brazier each night, or if a centurion favored certain rooms when wood was scarce. Some point to supply records and say there was method. Others look at the distances between forest and fort and say there was improvisation, sometimes desperation. You study the pile of kindling and understand both sides. Policy plans the fire, boots feed it. Religion also crouches here, practical as a wool cloak. A tiny votive of Vesta sits on a beam above the flames, smoke polishing her face to a darker gold. The soldier who owns it touches the amulet before stirring the pot. The gesture is quick, almost embarrassed, yet steady. Flame was sacred. Keeping it was a civic duty in Rome, and on the frontier the duty shrinks to your palm. Every brazier becomes a household, every circle a fragile city. Wind muscles through the camp again, bending torchlight into calmness. The brazier wheezes and returns to itself. Your eyes water, not from sadness but from smoke and relief. The heat does not conquer the cold, but it gives you an edge, a coin of bargain for a few degrees mercy. You trade stories for minutes of warmth. You trade your watch shift for the right to sit closer to the coals. The economy of night is simple and absolute. You rest the back of your fingers on your cheeks, then your ears, then the tendon at your wrist. Heat travels in little treaties. A guard arrives to collect replacements for the rampart. His cloak flaps like a sail cut from dusk. 2 for the north wall, he says, and you rise with a groan. For a heartbeat you think of refusing. Then the brazier sighs and reminds you that others held the wall while you thawed your bones. You nod and pull your gloves tight. Before you go, you look once more into the embers. They are not merely red. They are cities, alleys of orange, plazas of yellow, a senate of white where the hottest coals govern. The surface breathes. You draw a slow breath to match it. In, out, slow enough that sleep, watching from the edges, thinks you might be ready. Not yet, but almost. The guard who remains rearranges the ring of stones, fussing like a careful surgeon. He adds a log the way a librarian shelves a scroll. He knows, as you do, that the difference between comfort and misery is sometimes the width of a finger of wood. The brazier answers with a patient purr. You shoulder your spear. The night feels less hostile now, rearranged by one small sun. Beyond the circle, snow eddies in pale veils. The rampart waits, slick as bone. You walk away slowly, carrying a soot of warmth along your skin, like a memory you can spend later when the wind turns personal again. Breathe easy. The fire is steady. The camp is listening. For the next hour, you'll be the one to hold the cold outside the light. And when you return, the brazier will still be here, a promise glowing at the center of the long, long night. The fire fades. Its warmth lingers on your skin only a short while, and soon the true test begins. The long hours of the night, when the cold presses from every angle and you rely on what you are more than anything else. You pull your cloak tighter, but you know that the cloak alone will not save you. What truly stands between you and the frost is the ritual of layers: wool, leather, and whatever scraps you can scavenge to hold warmth inside. The first layer is the tunic. Scratchy, coarse, and far from luxurious, yet it clings to you like an old friend. Wool was never meant to feel soft. It was meant to endure, to outlast storms, to catch air in its fibers and hold it close to your skin. That air, those tiny pockets invisible to the eye, becomes a blanket. You shift and feel the weight of the fabric against your chest, stiff from smoke and sweat, but still dependable. Some soldiers, if fortune favored them, owned two tunics, one thinner and worn underneath, and one thicker, more robust, pulled over the first. Each layer gave another margin of safety against the creeping chill. You remember the lanolin smell, faint but constant, that seeps from the fabric. A reminder that this garment once belonged to sheep grazing far away in warmer hills. Their lives extended into yours, woven into threads that now keep you alive on the empire's edge. It's strange to think of wool as a tether across geography and time. Over wool comes leather. It creaks as you pull it across your shoulders. Thick, stiff, and reluctant to bend, leather is less forgiving than cloth, but more resistant. It catches the wind like a shield and refuses to tear where wool might fray. Soldiers rub it nightly with animal fat or oil, softening it against the cold and waterproofing it against the wet. The smell of grease and smoke clings to your hands long after you've finished. You look down at your fingers, see the glisten, and realize that even your own skin is oiled by necessity. Layer upon layer. This is the soldier's armor against the night. A wool tunic. A second wool tunic, if luck allows. A leather jerkin above that. A cloak wrapped and clasped at the shoulder. Sometimes strips of fur tied around arms, or a rabbit pelt at the chest, or even straw stuffed under a belt. Each addition is another chance at comfort, another barrier between life and shivering misery. One well-known fact: trousers were not standard issue for centuries. Imagine soldiers standing watch on Hadrian's wall in nothing but tunics, their knees red and swollen from the cold, their skin chafed by frost. Contemporary writers mocked the legions for their bare legs, yet they marched onward, their discipline apparently stronger than the weather. A curiosity slips into mind. Some soldiers secretly adopted local clothing. Germanic and Celtic tribes wore trousers as protection against the cold. Archaeological finds show Roman forts littered with evidence of leggings and wrappings, suggesting that many legionaries quietly followed the locals' wisdom. Historians still debate the commander's stance. Did they tolerate these small rebellions against uniform, or did discipline demand soldiers freeze in regulation gear? The truth is probably both, depending on the centurion and the severity of the winter. You fasten your cloak next. It hangs heavy, woven thick, dyed reddish-brown or deep rust. In Rome, its color marked a soldier even in crowded streets. Out here, the dye fades under snow. Still, the cloak is vital. It wraps fully, pins at the shoulder, and can serve as bedding, cover, or shield. You draw it tight now, pulling folds over your chest and tucking corners against the wind. Layering is not simply about warmth. It is about identity. Each garment marks you as part of the legion, disciplined and uniform, even if the wool scratches and the leather digs into your shoulders. You glance at the man beside you and see the same folds, the same knots, the same stiff layers that mirror your own. In hardship, there is unity. Yet, even layered, the cold finds its way in. It slithers down collars, sneaks through seams, settles in your boots where it cannot reach. You wiggle your toes, try to shake the stiffness from them, and know that you will not truly be warm until spring. Still, you endure. That is the Roman lesson. Comfort is rare, survival is constant. You lie back on straw bedding, layers pressed against you like the weight of empire itself. The barack groans, the wind rattles, but inside your cocoon of wool and leather, you feel a measure of safety. Sleep may come slowly, but it will come. And when the trumpet sounds in the morning, you will rise again, strap on the same garments, and carry on as always. There's humor, too. Soldiers murmur in the dark, joking that tunics itch worse than lice, or that leather stiffens so hard it could stand upright without a man inside it. The laughter is quiet, but it warms in ways we'll never can. You smile in the dark, adjusting your layers once more, and prepare to face the cold that never really leaves. You adjust your layers again, but one garment always claims the spotlight: the cloak, the sagum. Heavy, coarse, and unmistakably military. It was both uniform and blanket, both symbol and survival. You draw it around your shoulders now, fastening the clasp at the right side, letting it fall in thick folds across your chest and back. In daylight, its reddish-brown hue marks you as a soldier of Rome. By night, it becomes your shield against the cold. The sagum is not soft. Its wool is dense, its surface rough, the kind of fabric that scratches until you forget the itch and accept it as part of your skin. It was never meant to be elegant like the toga, that garment of senators and citizens in the Forum. No, the sagum is practical, dyed in earthy reds, not for style, but for function. Some dyes were cheaper, fading into rust or brown, yet the symbolism remained. You are wrapped in the empire's authority. At night, the sagum becomes bedding. Soldiers lie down with cloaks pulled over their bodies, sometimes doubled, sometimes shared. A cloak might be spread across straw, folded under your head as a makeshift pillow, then pulled over your chest again. It serves every purpose: cape, blanket, shield. If you had nothing else, the sagum could still keep you alive. You shift it tighter now and feel its weight. It pulls at your shoulder, reminding you of every mile marched, every post guarded, every night endured. The cloak carries not just warmth, but memory. Stains of smoke mark it. Threads of straw cling to it. Small burns from fire sparks at its edges. It is a living diary of service. A well-known fact: the sagum was so iconic that Roman soldiers were sometimes called sigarii, cloakmen. Even emperors who wanted to appear close to their troops donned the sagum when visiting camps. A curiosity: some cloaks were lined with fur on the inside, rare luxuries either purchased privately or taken from local traders. Soldiers with such cloaks became the envy of their tent mates. And historians still debate whether the reddish hue of the sagum was meant to conceal blood in battle or simply to reflect Rome's colors. Both explanations linger, like overlapping threads in the same weave. The cloak also played a role in ritual. Before campaigns, commanders draped sagums over altars, dedicating the march to Mars, god of war. Out here on the frontier, the cloak is less about ceremony and more about endurance. But you can feel the echoes of that sacred thread when you clasp yours at night. It is not only fabric, it is identity woven into wool. You look around the barack. Men are curled into cloaks like cocoons. Some pull hoods over their heads, others tuck edges under their feet. Cloaks overlap in piles, one soldier's warmth bleeding into another's. In the dark, the sagums look like a single blanket covering the whole contubernium, binding individuals into one legion. The cloak is not invincible. Snow clings to it, melting slowly into dampness. The wool grows heavy, dragging at your shoulders. Sometimes it smells of wet sheep, sometimes of smoke, sometimes of mildew. Yet you forgive it because it never abandons you. When sandals fail, when shields crack, when fires die, the cloak remains. Humor finds its way here, too. One soldier mutters that the sagum could stand upright on its own if left in the snow long enough, stiff with frost. Another jokes that it is heavier than his spear and less useful in battle. But when the brazier fades and the wind snakes under doors, laughter gives way to silence. Each man pulls his sagum tighter and knows its value. As you lie back now, sagum wrapped across your chest, you sense the empire pressing in again. This cloak, coarse and plain, connects you to centuries of soldiers before and after. The sagum was worn by men on the Rhine, in the Alps, in Dacia, in Judea, from desert sands to frozen moors. The cloak tied Rome's armies together more surely than marble statues or Senate decrees. And tonight, it ties you to them as well. The sagum is no toga. It is not meant for speeches, banquets, or ceremony. It is meant for nights like this, when cold presses close and sleep seems far. It whispers that you belong, that you endure, that even the loneliest outpost, you are part of something larger. You close your eyes and pull it over your face. The world fades into the scratch of wool and the slow rhythm of breath beneath its folds. You glance down at your feet, and suddenly the bravado of Rome feels less impressive. For all the empire's engineering brilliance, roads that stitch continents together, aqueducts that carry water across valleys, amphitheaters echoing with thousands of voices, what you're given for winter footwear seems almost laughable. Sandals. The caligy. Thick-soled, hobnailed, and built for marching, yes, but not for snow. The caligy are clever in summer. Their open design keeps your feet cool on hot stone roads, lets sweat escape, prevents blisters from festering. But out here, under a sky heavy with snow and wind sharp enough to peel bark from trees, they are punishment. The open slots expose your toes directly to the cold. Even wrapped in rags or stuffed with straw, the caligy are never enough. You wiggle your toes now and feel how numb they already are. Every soldier learns tricks. You watch as one man tears strips from an old tunic, binding them around his feet before sliding them into the sandals. Another pushes straw between his toes, muttering that it keeps frostbite away. Yet another pours animal fat on a cloth and wraps it, hoping grease will block the wind. These are not elegant solutions, but they are born from desperation. A well-known fact: frostbite was a real enemy for soldiers stationed in northern Britannia or Germania. Accounts mention men losing toes, hobbling back to barracks unable to march. A curiosity: there are records of legionaries wearing udons, simple wool socks, beneath their sandals, a practice mocked by some Romans as effeminate. Yet on the frozen frontiers, fashion gave way to survival. Historians still debate whether the army officially issued such socks or if soldiers improvised them from local weavers. Evidence points both ways. The sandals themselves bear scars. The iron hobnails clink on frozen earth, but the leather straps crack when exposed to repeated frost. Soldiers rub oil into them at night, just as with cloaks and armor. But there is only so much care can do. Leather stiffens like bone, and straps snap under strain. You recall men cursing loudly as they stumble, forced to bind sandals with rope until they can be repaired. You shift your feet closer to the brazier. The warmth seeps in slowly, painfully, until the numbness stings back into life. The pain is sharp, almost unbearable, but it is proof that your toes still belong to you. You think of the phrase some veterans use: better pain than silence. Silence in your feet means the cold has claimed them. At night, you keep sandals beside your bed, not on your feet. You rub your toes, trying to coax them alive, then wrap them in your cloak. You know that tomorrow, the march will begin again, each step hammering frost deeper into bone. You wonder whether Rome's generals and marble halls ever considered the agony of feet on snow. Perhaps not. Perhaps they believed discipline alone could keep toes intact. But you know better. Discipline warms the spirit. It does not warm the flesh. Humor, as always, rises to the surface. A soldier beside you jokes that he will trade his sword for a pair of boots. Another laughs that Rome can conquer the world but cannot invent socks. Even in misery, laughter is insulation. You remember stories of soldiers adapting further. Some bartered with locals for fur shoes, crude but warm. Others stitched scraps of leather into makeshift boots. The centurions often looked away. After all, a soldier who cannot walk is no use to the legion. Flexibility, it seems, is as Roman as marble arches. And yet, despite the suffering, the march always continues. Men shuffle, limp, curse, but they march. Caligis slap against ice. Toes grow raw, and Rome advances, step after painful step, held together by the stubbornness of its soldiers more than the genius of its footwear. You wiggle your toes again, wrapping the sagum tighter around your legs. The night stretches on, and you pray that dawn comes quickly, bringing even the faintest promise of warmth. The night stretches on, and the cold does not relent. Fire flickers low, cloaks are pulled tighter, yet even with every layer of wool and leather, the wind still slips through the seams. What saves you now is not just clothing or flame, it is the closeness of other bodies, the simple truth that human warmth multiplied becomes a weapon against winter. The barack is cramped. 8 men assigned to one cantaburnium, breathing the same smoky air, lying shoulder to shoulder on straw mats spread across the floor. It is not a luxury. It is survival. You press closer to the man beside you, feel his cloak brush against yours, and the faint radiance of his body seeps into your side. He shifts, half asleep, mutters something in a language you do not fully catch, and then falls still. The warmth remains. Heat here is currency. One man alone freezes, but 10 together create a fragile hearth made of flesh and breath. Your straw bedding crunches as you turn, searching for a better angle, but comfort is not the goal. Endurance is. When snow beats against the thin wooden walls and frost creeps into every crack, the true insulation is each other. A well-known fact. The Roman army deliberately grouped men into cantaburnia, small squads of 8 who cooked together, trained together, marched together, and slept together. Archaeologists have uncovered the stone foundations of such rooms, narrow rectangles designed to force proximity. A curiosity, letters from Vindolanda, a fort along Hadrian's Wall, mention not grand battles, but petty complaints about roommates. One snored too loudly, another hoarded rations, another prayed aloud while others tried to sleep. And historians still debate the psychology of this arrangement. Was it genius, forging bonds stronger than blood, or was it a constant strain that commanders had to manage? Most likely, it was both, brotherhood and irritation, fused by necessity. Tonight, the balance leans toward brotherhood. You hear whispers ripple through the room as men tell stories to distract from the cold. One recalls the vineyards of southern Gaul, where grapes burst sweet and warm under the sun. Another tells of a march across the Alps, where snow blinded them so completely that they tied ropes between their waists to avoid losing one another. Someone else groans that the gods must despise soldiers, for Jupiter hurls lightning in summer and frost in winter, leaving no season merciful. The others chuckle, their laughter quiet but sincere. The stories continue. A veteran describes the siege of a Gallic hill fort. Not with pride, but with humor. We fear the enemy, yes, but more we feared the rain soaking our cloaks. Never trust a Gallic cloud, heavier than their spears. Another soldier, younger, speaks of figs sold in Rome's marketplaces, their sweetness so vivid that even the memory warms him now. You close your eyes and imagine figs, soft and rich, melting against the tongue. The barack does not feel as bitter when the mind wanders to summer fruits. Words are insulation. Each anecdote becomes a log tossed onto the dwindling fire of morale. Without stories, silence would rule, and silence is cruel in the cold. It amplifies discomfort, forces you to listen to the creak of wood and the howl of wind. With stories, even pain becomes background noise, woven into laughter, memory, and the rhythm of speech. At intervals, someone drifts into sleep. Snores echo unevenly, each one a reminder that bodies are still alive, still fighting the night. One soldier jerks, suddenly, twitching in dream, elbowing you in the ribs. Another mumbles in his sleep, muttering half-formed prayers to Mercury, to Fortuna, to any god who might listen across frozen miles. You do not mind. The sounds are proof of life, and life itself is warmth. You think of the many barracks spread across the empire. From Britannia to Dacia, from the Rhine to the Euphrates, men are huddling in exactly this way, breathing in smoky rooms, cloaks overlapping, stories softening hardship. The empire is not only marble and stone. It is this, men pressed close in straw-filled rooms, surviving by sharing heat and stories. The intimacy is not always comfortable. Bodies shift, odors mingle, elbows dig into sides. But hardship strips away privacy. You surrender to the press of humanity, because without it, you would not see dawn. Discipline demands drills by day, but survival demands closeness by night. The cold is the true centurion, commanding silence and cooperation. Laughter fades, and the barack grows quieter. Snores dominate now, along with the soft rattle of wind at the door. You pull your sagum tighter, curl deeper into the press of men, and allow your mind to wander. Perhaps tomorrow, the gods will relent. Perhaps the snow will soften, the wind will ease, the sun will appear, faint but golden. But even if none of that comes, you know you will rise. You will march, because here, in this small contubernium, you are not alone. Shared heat, shared stories. This is Rome's secret armor, stronger than shields, warmer than cloaks. You close your eyes, and for the first time tonight, the cold feels distant, dulled by human presence and memory. Sleep finally comes, heavy and slow, carried on the rhythm of your brother's breath. When dawn comes on the frontier, you step outside and see the genius of Roman order written into frozen earth. Even in the wilderness, even under snow, the legions shape the land into geometry. Nothing is random. Every camp, whether for one night or for decades, follows a pattern older than memory, older than some towns the empire now rules. You walk the central road, the Via Praetoria, straight as a spear thrust. On either side, rows of tents or barracks stand in rigid lines. Snow piles evenly on rooftops, caught in perfect rhythm, as if nature itself has been drilled into discipline. Behind you, the camp gate stands framed by ditches cut deep into frozen soil. The wind roars, but the ditches break its speed, turning violent gusts into muted sighs before they reach the heart of camp. The ramparts rise next. Wooden stakes, sharpened and frozen solid, glitter with frost like teeth of a pale beast. Behind them, earthen walls absorb the howl of storms. The engineers of Rome never forgot the enemy. Whether barbarians or weather, both were to be resisted by structure and precision. You realize the camp itself is a soldier defending those inside. A well-known fact. Roman camps were built in standardized layouts across the empire, from Britain to Syria. Archaeologists marvel at the consistency, the rectangles stamped into earth like signatures of order. A curiosity, even temporary marching camps, built for a single night, followed the same rules. Ditches dug, gates aligned, tents placed in strict formation. Historians still debate whether such meticulous effort drained soldiers' energy unnecessarily or preserved morale by turning chaos into order. You stand at the center, where the commander's tent once rose or the headquarters stone now stands. Even here, In the bitter frontier, a line of command radiates from geometry. Roads slice through the snow. Barracks line them neatly. Storage pits hold grain, amphory, firewood, all arranged so that not even hunger can slip through unnoticed. The camp is not merely defense. It is psychology. You feel safer walking its orderly roads than wandering the wilderness. You know that every ditch, every wall, every angle exists because men worked in unity, shaping mud and frost into something human. The grid itself warms the mind. At night, this layout becomes a shield against despair. The ditches catch snowdrifts so they do not bury the barracks. The roads channel men quickly to their duties. The gates, always placed with precision, remind you that Rome faces every direction equally. Even under storm, you can orient yourself. North, south, east, west, Rome holds them all on her grid. Inside the barracks, soldiers sleep closer because walls and ditches slow the wind. Fires burn longer because wood is stored in orderly heaps, protected from snow. Latrines, dug downhill, keep waste from fouling the water supply. Every detail reflects thought, centuries of trial and refinement, adapted for climates both scorching and freezing. You realize that survival here is not luck, but design. Still, the cold presses. The geometry cannot banish it. You pull your sagum closer, look at the long ditches filled with snow, and imagine the labor it took to carve them from frozen ground. Blisters, cracked hands, men cursing as spades hit ice. Yet the work was done. Rome never asked whether it was easy, only whether it was possible. You think of the barbarians outside, living in scattered huts or wandering forests. They survive by instinct, by heritage. You, a Roman soldier, survive by discipline, by structure. Neither way is simple, but tonight you will sleep inside a grid, and that feels like victory. The day's drills fade, the fires sink low, and eventually every soldier faces the hardest test of the frontier. Not the clash of swords, not the sting of frost, but the simple task of trying to sleep. You lower yourself on a straw, spread thin across frozen soil, and feel the crunch beneath your weight. It is not a mattress, not even a cushion. It is survival, brittle and scratchy. Straw does not welcome you. It pricks the skin, leaves splinters, shifts noisily whenever you move. Yet without it, the cold ground would suck the warmth straight from your bones. You pull your cloak tighter and settle into the uneven bedding, accepting discomfort as a companion. Comfort is not the promise here. Only insulation, only the faint mercy of not lying directly on frost. The earth beneath is harder than stone. Frozen soil does not give. It greets your shoulder with the chill of iron. You wiggle, adjust, try to find a hollow where the body can rest easier, but every position carries its own ache. Men mutter in the dark, each seeking a scrap of straw thicker than the rest. The sound of bodies shifting on brittle bedding becomes the night's lullaby. A well-known fact: archaeologists have found impressions of straw and reeds in the floors of ancient Roman barracks, sometimes even remnants charred by fire or preserved in damp soil. A curiosity: in some places, soldiers mixed herbs such as rosemary or thyme into their straw, both for scent and for the hope of deterring lice. And historians still debate whether legionaries slept more soundly in wooden bunks, introduced in some permanent forts, or whether the simplicity of straw on earth remained the common lot. You turn to your side and hear the soldier beside you whisper. He jokes that he has counted every straw in his bedding, and none are comfortable. Another mutters that straw is noisier than geese, impossible to sleep on without waking every neighbor. Laughter ripples faintly, broken by yawns. Even in mockery, straw serves its purpose. It gives the men something to talk about besides the cold. Straw has its dangers too. It burns. A spark from a brazier could ignite bedding in seconds, turning comfort into catastrophe. Many veterans recall such fires, when whole rooms flared in chaos, men scrambling barefoot into the snow. Some barracks banned fires near bedding altogether, forcing soldiers to choose between warmth and safety. You glance at the faint glow of embers and tuck your cloak closer, aware of the risk smoldering nearby. The smell of straw fills the room. Dry, dusty, faintly sweet, tinged now with sweat and smoke. You breathe it in with every sigh, until even your dreams smell of harvest fields. Perhaps that is its secret mercy. For a soldier far from home, straw is a reminder of farms, of summer, of something peaceful. Even when scratchy and thin, it ties the frontier to familiar earth. You shift again. The straw crackles, a noisy bedfellow. Sleep does not come quickly here. Your hip aches, your back stiffens, and your toes remain cold despite every layer. Yet slowly, with each breath, you surrender. The body, exhausted from drills and marches, eventually silences complaints. The earth may be hard, but it is steady. The straw may be thin, but it is yours. The barack falls into rhythm. Snores, coughs, mutters. Somewhere a soldier dreams aloud, whispering a lover's name. Another groans, trapped in memory of battle. You lie still, listening to the chorus of fatigue. The straw muffles none of it. Yet strangely, it comforts you. This noise is proof that others endure beside you. You are not alone on the frozen ground. You think of homes far away, with mattresses stuffed with wool or feathers. You imagine Roman villas with couches draped in silks. Then you laugh quietly, because such thoughts make the straw feel even sharper. Better to accept the prick of stalks than to dream of beds you will not see for years. So you roll onto your back, stare at the dark ceiling, and let the weight of cloak and straw pin you into sleep. The earth is cold, the bedding scratchy, but dawn will come, and with it, another march. Tonight, you rest not because it is comfortable, but because it is necessary. And that, in its way, is enough. You wake in the still hours before dawn, lips cracked, mouth parched. The brazier has burned out, leaving nothing but ash, and when you reach for the water jug near your bed, your fingers meet a block of ice. What was fluid yesterday has become stone overnight. You tip the vessel, but nothing moves. The liquid of life is now locked in a frozen prison. You sigh, knowing this ritual too well. In winter, every drink begins with a struggle. Snow is everywhere. The camp lies buried in it, piled on rooftops, choking the ditches, coating the ramparts in white armor. Yet this abundance mocks you. Snow cannot be swallowed as it is, not without punishment. A soldier desperate enough may scoop a handful into his mouth, but the relief lasts only a moment. Then teeth ache, stomach cramps, and the body shivers as if the cold has crawled inside the bones. You have seen comrades learn the hard way, doubled over from chewing snow too greedily. Survival demands patience. Snow must be melted. Fire must coax it into water again. You trudge to the yard where men are already at work. Spears and axes strike against barrels to break their icy crust. Amphorae are hauled from storage, their clay sides split by expanding ice. Shards lie scattered on the frozen ground, each one a reminder of Rome's limitations. The empire can pave roads across mountains, but it cannot command winter to spare its jars. Someone calls for help, and you join in, scooping snow into a dented pot. The flakes hiss and vanish when placed above the flames, leaving behind only a thin trickle at the bottom. It takes armfuls of snow to fill a single cup. The men groan, impatient. A soldier mutters, "The gods are cruel. So much white, yet so little drink." His words are true. Snow is endless, but usable water is rare. A well-known fact. The Roman soldier's body required liters of water each day. Marching, drilling, or simply existing in armor demanded it. In summer, rivers and wells answered that need. In winter, the answer froze. A curiosity, some forts show evidence of snow pits lined with straw, dug to preserve ice and snow, so it could be rationed carefully. It sounds clever, almost elegant. But in practice, the men still labored daily, carrying, melting, guarding. Historians still argue whether snow water was always boiled to kill unseen sickness, or whether thirst often forced soldiers to drink it raw. The debate remains unsettled, as elusive as steam rising from a half-melted pot. You sit by the fire, waiting. The pot trembles, steam curling upward like incense. Men gather with wooden cups, eyes fixed on the bubbling surface. Each ladle is precious. One soldier raises his to his lips and sighs as though he drinks wine from Campania. Another passes his cup to a comrade before taking a sip himself, sharing what little he has. Laughter erupts when one veteran toasts the finest vintage of the Rhine, and though the joke is bitter, it warms the spirit. Ice resists at every step. Wells freeze overnight and must be cracked open with picks. Buckets left unattended seize solid to the ground. Even leather skins stiffen, their mouths sealed shut by frost. Guards shuffle in frustration, hammering containers against stones to loosen them. And every morning begins the same way, with water locked in ice and soldiers forced to earn every drop. At night, water is stored close to the fires. Amphorae are wrapped in cloaks, tucked into straw pits, or buried shallow in the ground where the earth's constant chill might prevent full freezing. Men grow inventive, turning every trick they can imagine into a small battle against frost. Yet nothing is guaranteed. By dawn, the Empire's greatest treasure, drinkable water, is always half claimed by winter again. One soldier whispers about rivers in summer, how he once swam lazily in the Tiber's warmth. Another recalls village fountains in Italy, flowing endlessly, children splashing without care. The contrast is sharp. Here, even one mouthful requires sweat and smoke. The memory of abundance is almost cruel in this place of scarcity. And yet, snow holds its strange beauty. You pause, watching torchlight scatter across the drifts, turning them into fields of silver. The camp, buried under white silence, feels hushed, softened. Footsteps crunch rhythmically, voices muffle, even commands sound quieter. Snow steals water and gives stillness. It denies and blesses in the same breath. You lift your cup finally, sip the thin, metallic liquid, and feel it run down your throat like gold. It is lukewarm, almost tasteless, but it revives you. Around you, men nod, smile faintly, press their lips to wood and clay with reverence. Rome survives tonight not with wine, not with rivers, but with snow turned slowly, painfully, back into water. Your stomach growls long before the dawn trumpet sounds. Hunger is sharper in winter, as if the cold itself devours what little strength you have left. Bread, barley, dried meat. The staples of a Roman soldier's diet become lifelines when frost rules the land. You shift on your straw bed and feel the hollowness in your belly. The day will begin soon, and so will the battle to make rations last. The granaries stand in the center of camp, guarded as fiercely as the walls. Grain is Rome's true weapon. Spears may pierce, shields may protect, but without grain, the legions crumble. You watch as men queue with sacks, filling them with barley or wheat, their breath forming clouds in the icy air. Each sack is weighed carefully, each measure recorded, for famine lurks even here. The bread that results is hard, dense, almost stone. You tear a chunk with effort, jaw aching as you chew. Yet its heaviness comforts. Each bite is slow fire feeding the body. Sometimes you soften it in water, or heat it briefly over a brazier, but often there is no time. The bread breaks teeth, but it keeps you alive. A well-known fact: soldiers were issued rations meant to last weeks. Carefully calculated grain, oil, sometimes dried legumes. In theory, the system was flawless. In practice, winter complicated everything. Grain spoiled in damp air. Amphorae cracked in frost. Hunting became risky when snow drove animals deep into forests. A curiosity, some records suggest soldiers occasionally ate acorn bread when grain ran short, grinding bitter acorns into flour. Historians still argue whether this was widespread necessity or rare desperation. Salted meat is another staple. Strips of pork, cured and brined, last long after slaughter. But in the cold, they harden like wood. You gnaw at one now, jaw working, flavor salty enough to sting your tongue. A comrade jokes that the meat could double as a spear shaft. Another adds that perhaps it already did. Laughter eases the chewing, though not the hunger. The cold also steals appetite in cruel ways. Fingers numb, teeth ache, throats tighten. A bowl of barley porridge clutched between two hands is more than food. It is warmth radiating into your skin. Men huddle close, each spoonful slow, savoring heat as much as flavor. You lift the bowl to your lips, steam rising into your beard, and sigh at the faint comfort. You think of Roman villas with platters of fish, olives, figs, honey dripping golden on white bread. You imagine the feasts of senators and generals, their tables groaning with variety. Then you look at your ration: dark bread, salted pork, barley gruel. The contrast is absurd, almost funny. Yet this food is what holds the empire's line against winter. It is not luxury that conquers frontiers. It is porridge. Sometimes, fortune improves the meal. Hunters return with deer or rabbits. Fishermen break holes in ice and haul out trout, silvery and wriggling. Such nights are celebrations. Fires flare, meat roasts, fat hisses, and for an hour, the barack feels rich. But such feasts are rare. Most nights, you return to bread, salt, and grain. One soldier tells the tale of a garrison that boiled leather straps when rations failed, chewing them until they softened. Another swears he saw men in Dacia grind pine bark into flour. Whether truth or exaggeration, the lesson is the same. Hunger drives invention. The cold ensures you are never far from desperation. Still, food is shared. A man breaks his bread in half, handing a chunk to his contubernalis. Another pours the last of his oil into the porridge pot for everyone. Sharing is not kindness, is strategy. An army marches only if all march. If one man collapses, the line falters. Better to be hungry together than full alone. By night, rations are stored in neat rows, amphorae wrapped in straw, sacks stacked high, guarded by men who know their value. You sleep easier knowing the stores remain intact, though hunger still gnaws. Tomorrow will bring the same routine. Bread too hard, meat too salty, porridge too thin. Yet you will eat. And because you eat, you will endure. Rations are not joy. They're discipline given form. And in the frozen dark of the frontier, discipline is as necessary as fire. The order comes as the sun sinks, and already the sky looks heavy with snow. The centurion calls your name, his voice brisk, his tone giving no room for protest. Guard duty is sacred in the legions. Storm or no storm, the walls must be watched. You tighten your cloak, sling your shield across your back, take your spear in hand, and step out of the barack into the wind. The storm greets you like an enemy ambush. Flakes strike your face in sharp bursts, sticking to your beard, clinging to lashes. The world blurs into shades of white and gray, a canvas erased by winter. You lower your head, push through drifts already knee-high, and make your way to the rampart. Your comrade trudges beside you, both of you silent. Conversation feels wasted when each breath crystallizes in your throat. You climb the wooden stairs to the wall. Each step groans under the weight of ice. At the top, the wind hits harder, tearing at your cloak, dragging at your spear. You plant the shaft into the snow, steadying yourself against its pull. The palisade stretches out, jagged teeth rimmed in frost. Beyond, the wilderness lies hidden under a swirling veil. Forest, fields, enemy villages all gone. Only the storm remains. Guard duty here is absurd and essential all at once. What raider, you think, would dare creep through such weather? Yet you also know this is exactly when discipline matters most. Rome does not sleep. Rome does not yield to storms. That is the creed drilled into you since the first day of training. And so you stand, teeth clattering, fingers stiff in wool mitts, refusing to surrender to the cold. The camp lies behind, glowing faintly with firelight. The barracks are blurred boxes, smoke curling from roofs, muffled voices drifting out whenever doors creak open. You envy those inside, soldiers pressed together on straw, their breath combining into warmth. Out here, only your own heartbeat reminds you that you are alive. Each gust feels like a challenge. Still standing? Still breathing? Still Roman? You whisper back, through frozen lips, yes. A well-known fact. Roman watch rotations were strict, divided into vigiliae, the 4 watches of the night. No soldier stood guard too long, but even 2 hours could stretch into eternity in storms like this. A curiosity. In Britannia, inscriptions suggest that sand-filled hourglasses track time for guards. But who can trust sand when snow clogs every gap, when water freezes solid? Historians still debate whether commanders really enforced such precision during blizzards or whether rotations blurred into mercy when frost grew cruel. Your comrade coughs beside you. His cloak flaps like a banner, snapping in the wind. He mutters a prayer to Fortuna, goddess of luck, though his words vanish into the gale. You nod but say nothing. Saving breath feels more important. Instead, you stamp your feet, swing your arms, anything to keep blood flowing. To stand still is to invite the cold to seep deeper. Time loses shape. The storm makes every minute indistinguishable. Sometimes you think hours have passed, only to realize the shift has barely begun. Your eyes blur, not from tears but from ice. You blink, and the snow plays tricks. Shapes emerge, trees bending like enemies, shadows slinking across drifts. Your hand grips the spear tighter, heart racing. Then the blur dissolves, leaving only snow. The storm toys with your senses, testing your mind as much as your flesh. The real danger is not barbarians slipping through the storm. It is sleep. You lean into your spear, eyes half closed, and the temptation whispers, just a moment, just a breath of rest. But you know the stories. Guards who closed their eyes never woke. Their comrades found them frozen stiff at dawn, standing upright, as if still at post, snow masking their final breaths. You shudder, not from the wind this time, and force yourself awake. Your comrade hums faintly, a tune from his village in Gaul. The melody is broken, shaky, but it fills the silence with something human. You join in, half muttering words you do not know, letting the rhythm anchor you both against the storm's endless howl. Song is a rope tied between souls, and tonight you both cling to it. Behind you, the camp shifts. A horn sounds, faint through the snow. Relief floods your chest. The next watch is coming. You stamp your feet one last time, fingers clenching your spear until they ache, waiting for shadows to emerge from the barracks. At last you see them. 2 figures, cloaks drawn tight, faces grim, spears in hand. They climb toward you, each step an effort. You and your comrade do not linger. You descend stiffly, legs trembling, hands numb, teeth clenched against the sting of melting frost. When you push through the barrack door, warmth feels like fire and pain at once. Your fingers burn as blood rushes back. Your face stings as ice thaws. The others glance at you with sympathy and relief. They know their turn will come soon enough. You collapse on a straw, sagum pulled tight. The storm outside rages, indifferent to your suffering. Yet you are still alive, and that is victory. Guard duty in snowstorms is not about spotting enemies. It is about proving that Rome itself does not falter even when nature wages war. You close your eyes, exhausted, and think of the wall behind you, still standing, still watched, still roam. Sleep on the frontier never arrives as a guest. It sneaks in like a scout, testing the ground, pausing at every creak of wood and cough of soldier. You lie on straw, sagum over your shoulders, and try to let your breath slow. The storm has passed, leaving a brittle quiet, but still the barack seems to hum with leftover wind. Somewhere a shield shifts on its peg with a hollow clack. Somewhere a man mutters a prayer he didn't finish during his watch. You let your eyes close anyway, trusting the routine that has carried you through so many nights. 2 slow breaths, 1 long listen, 2 slow breaths more. And then the dreaming begins. It rarely starts kindly. Perhaps you are back on the rampart. The snow is falling upward this time, wrong and dizzying, as if the sky has become a deep white well and you're tilting into it. Perhaps you are marching and cannot lift your feet, each step nailed to the earth by hobnails that have grown into roots. Or perhaps there is no scene at all, only the heavy sense that something waits just beyond the door, something patient, something you forgot to guard against. You shift. The straw answers with noisy disapproval. Someone beside you snores, and for a moment the sound is a river, a friendly one, trickling through summer reeds. Relief loosens your jaw. The river fades. The barack returns. Broken sleep is the common ration here. You doze, surface, doze again. The body, so disciplined in daylight, cannot command dreams. They come when they wish. A well-known fact. Roman writers say soldiers learned to sleep anywhere. Under wagons, at the roadside, sitting against shields, because exhaustion made pillows of whatever the day allowed. That skill is your only luxury now. You drift in little parcels of rest, stitched together by habit more than comfort. Tonight your dream takes a sharp turn. You are on watch, but the wall is made of bread loaves stacked end to end, and with every gust they crumble a little. You press them back into place, laughing at the absurdity, telling your centurion you can mortar them with porridge. A childish joke, but then, without warning, one of the loaves becomes a helmet, and the helmet belongs to a friend you haven't seen in months. He smiles and says nothing. The feeling that you have forgotten some essential duty runs like cold water down your spine. You wake with a gasp, hands searching for your spear though you know it is racked by the door. A curiosity circles in murmured talk. Some soldiers tie a leather thong loosely around wrist or ankle before sleep, connected to a shield or spear propped beside the bed. The tiny tug of weight, they say, keeps the mind from wandering into deep dreams where waking is hard. You tried it once. It worked until the thong slipped and slapped your knuckles in the night, sending you upright with a yelp. The laughter that followed warmed the room more than the brazier. Even when dreams are kind, they rarely stay. You get a few steps along a Roman road lined with cypresses, the sun cushioned in pale gold, a woman ahead carrying a basket of figs, and then, crack, the door bangs in the wind, and the barack erupts into grumbles. A man who cannot sleep flips his cloak, the fabric snapping like a sail. Another turns over so hard the straw migrates, prickling your ear. The brazier pops. Sleep fractures into puzzles you can't reassemble. Historians still argue whether frontier garrisons kept formal sleep orders, rotations that guaranteed a minimum span of rest, or whether reality washed such plans away whenever storms, raids, or construction demanded extra hands. You suspect the truth is written in your own bones. Some nights Rome grants you hours, some nights it grants you minutes, and you learn to treasure both. You roll onto your side and find a more forgiving fold of sagum. The wool smells faintly of smoke and lanolin, like the memory of a hillside pressed into thread. Earlier, you rubbed vinegar into your cracked hands. Remember that vinegar trick from the fire circle. And now the sharp scent lingers, oddly clean, oddly homelike. You touch your palm to your cheek to feel if the warmth still holds. It does barely. Somewhere outside, snow slips from a roof with a soft shudder. The barack breathes with you. Another dream slides in, small and nearly pleasant. An orchard in late afternoon, wind combing the grass. You're not a soldier there. You're just a pair of feet moving through shade. Then the shade deepens, and the trunks of the trees become the palisade. The apples are helmets again, round and waiting. The wind carries the thin trumpet note that calls the next watch. You do not argue. You've learned not to. Even your dreams obey the horn. You wake before it sounds, though, habit always a step ahead. Around you, the contubernium shifts. One man whispers a fragment of a song. Another answers with the last two words, as if stitching closed a seam. A third breathes in a slow descending scale, the same sleepy cadence he uses every night, like a personal liturgy. You add your own small ritual, a long inhale to the back of the throat, a longer exhale through the nose, the kind that would fog the winter air if you were outdoors. In here it only fogs your thoughts, softening their edges. There is humor in the brokenness, and it survives, somehow, even at this hour. If Jupiter meant us to sleep, someone mumbles, he wouldn't have invented straw. Another replies, if Jupiter meant us to wake, he wouldn't have invented straw. Warm little chuckles slip like ribbons through the dark. You smile into your cloak, allow a tiny laugh to warm your chest, and then let it go. The barack settles. A sleepy refrain moves through the room, not spoken but felt. Breathe and ease, breathe and ease. You ride the way you rode the day's march, one step, then another. Your mind loosens its grip on walls, weather duty. The brazier is a small red star, and stars are patient. You let the world shrink to that point of ember in your own steady pulse. Before the next horn, you manage a pocket of true sleep, the kind that has weight. No pictures, no snow, only darkness, comfortable and complete. When the horn does sound, you are ready. Tired, yes, but mended enough to stand. You throw the sagum back, plant your feet on the cold floor, and feel the night's little victories stack neatly inside your ribs. A laugh, a breath, a dream that did not turn into a warning. The day begins again. On the frontier, broken sleep is still sleep. And you, Roman, are very good at making do. The storm has eased, but the cold remains a living presence. You can almost hear it, whispering through the gaps in the barack wall, creeping beneath doors, threading through every stitch of clothing. It is not enough to have shelter. You must wear your own fortress. Tonight, that fortress is wool, fur, and whatever scraps ingenuity provides. The sagum cloak lies across your shoulders. Heavy, scratchy, dyed in earthy rust and dull indigo. It is not soft. It was never meant to be soft. The sagum is a soldier's skin in winter, woven thick, resisting snow and sleet, draping long enough to wrap around your body twice. You tug it close, pinning it with a brooch at your chest, feeling the weight press like a shield. Scratchy though it may be, wool holds heat. Wool remembers sheep standing in rain, and so it guards you against your own night's weather. Beside you, another soldier has traded for a fur. Wolf? Fox? It is hard to tell, but the smell is pungent, wild. He pulls it over his head like a hood, ears flopping against his cheek. The others laugh, calling him centurion of the kennels, but no one denies the warmth of fur. On the frontier, dignity bends easily to survival. A well-known fact. Roman armies relied heavily on woolen cloaks, sometimes supplemented with animal pelts when stationed in colder provinces. Cloaks doubled as blankets, ground sheets, even makeshift tents. A curiosity. In Germania, soldiers are recorded wearing trousers, brachy, borrowed from local tribes, an odd sight to traditional Romans who viewed trousers as barbarian. Historians still argue whether such garments became common practice or remained a tolerated eccentricity. You remember the first time you pulled trousers over your legs. Strange, constricting at first. But when the snow came, when the wind scraped the skin raw, you understood why locals swore by them. You learned quickly that pride is a poor insulator. Many who mocked trousers the loudest wore them beneath cloaks by the end of the season. Improvisation never stops. Strips of cloth are wound around feet, layered thick before sandals or boots are strapped on. Some soldiers rub fat into leather to keep it flexible against frost. Others scavenge discarded wool scraps, knotting them into makeshift scarves. The camp looks less like a disciplined army and more like a patchwork tribe, each man wrapped in whatever keeps him alive. But beneath the mismatched layers beats the order of Rome, still united, still marching. You run your hands along the weave of your cloak, feeling every ridge of spun wool. It is stiff where frost clings, damp where melted snow seeped in earlier. You spread it closer to the fire, careful not to scorch it. Burn holes in your sagum, and you may as well invite the cold into your chest. Around the brazier, men do the same, cloaks steaming faintly, the barack filling with the sharp odor of wet wool. The sagum also tells stories. Cloaks bear patches from campaigns past, stitched repairs done hastily on marches. One man's cloak shows a seam repaired with bright green thread stolen from a villager's tunic. Another's carries a faint stain, never washed away, from the wine ration spilled months ago. Your own sagum is marked with soot from nights of fire duty. These imperfections remind you that survival is not polished. It is layered, mended, and carried forward. At times, cloaks become walls themselves. On the march, 8 men may stretch them into makeshift shelters, pegging corners down, sleeping beneath like animals in a burrow. In desperate storms, 2 cloaks stitched crudely can become a bag, trapping body heat, making a cocoon against death. You imagine such nights and know they're not far from reality here. The cold spares no one. Even officers, proud in their crested helmets by day, sit cloaked and hunched by night, indistinguishable from common soldiers. Rank dissolves when the frost settles. Warmth equalizes all. Still, warmth is never enough. You lie back, sagum wrapped, fur collar pressed to your chin, feet cocooned in rags. The cold fine seams seeps into wrists, into ankles, into the thin space between breaths. You shift closer to your comrades, forming a line of cloaked figures, each man radiating a little heat. It is not comfort, but it is survival. You think briefly of Rome itself, the city where senators parade in flowing togas, impractical against even the mildest chill. How absurd those garments seem here. On the frontier, fashion is forgotten. Function reigns. The toga may symbolize civilization, but the sagum wins wars. Laughter ripples faintly in the dark. One soldier boasts that he has 4 cloaks layered, making him invincible to frost. Another retorts that even Jupiter cannot pierce his trousers of 3 folds. The barack chuckles, teeth flashing in torchlight. The humor is small, but it is as warming as wool. And so you drift towards sleep, wrapped not in comfort, but in compromise. Your fortress is not stone or fire, but cloak, fur, and rag, layers of human stubbornness woven against winter's siege. The cold waits, patient. You wait, stubborn. Between you stretches only wool. Tonight, it will be enough. Morning comes pale and brittle, the kind of light that feels like a blade drawn across the horizon. You step onto the rampart and look outward. The world is a field of white and shadow, drifted snow, black ribs of forest, a river wearing a skin of glass. The storm has emptied the land of sound. Even crows seem reluctant to speak. You pull your sagum closer and remind yourself of an unglamorous truth that every frontier veteran learns. Winter is not your private torment. It is the enemy's as well. The barracks behind you still breathe sleep. Broken sleep? Yes, but enough to keep men upright. Fires are revived from their own soft hearts of ember. Bread is reheated on the brazier rim, turning brittle crust into something kinder. You chew, watch your breath rise, and think about the other side of the wall. Somewhere out there, in a scatter of huts or under a canopy of pine, people wake to the same ache in fingers and toes, the same hunt for water that isn't ice. The thought doesn't soften you, it focuses you. Misery shared is not peace. It is equilibrium. A well-known fact steadies the mind. The legions usually took Hiberna, winter quarters. Campaign seasons had rhythms. Roads turned to mud or stone. Rivers swelled or froze. Supply lines grew fragile. Rome learned to pause, fortify, repair, drill, watch. And yet, exceptions gleam like sparks in ash. Caesar pressed operations in winter more than once in Gaul, seizing surprise while others slept. Winter could lull enemies. Winter could also blind them. Out on the horizon, the river glints in patches. Men tell stories about winters so hard you could march a cohort across, shields glimmering over ice like extra moons. Others swear you can hear a river groan before it breaks, like an ox under load. You hope not to test either tale, but you respect the calculation. A frozen river is a road for anyone, legionary, traitor, or raider. Historians still argue a knotty question. Did northern tribes raid less in deepest winter, cowed by hunger and frost, or more when rivers froze and marshes stiffened into highways? The answer, maddeningly, is it depends. On the winter, on the chieftain, on the state of Roman stores, on whether last harvest grain made it safely to the granaries. Your own memory adds a footnote. When our camp lights looked thin and wood piles low, rumors traveled faster than smoke. You descend the ladder and follow the Via Praetoria, the straight spine of camp that feels, in winter, like a promise. Geometry against wilderness. At the gate, sentries swap names with the new watch, voices low, the ritual quick. You glance at their faces, cracked lips, raw cheeks, eyes ringed with the ash of too little sleep, and you see your own day reflected back. Then you look beyond the gate again. The forest edges ripple in the wind like fur on a beast's back. Curiosities ping around the cook fire later, half gossip, half study. Some men swear they've seen locals stride across snow on woven wicker frames, wide as a shield, snowshoes of sort, leaving soft ovals instead of deep prints. Others claim sledges, pulled by hardy little ponies, can ghost through drifts where a Roman mule would balk. You file these claims where all frontier intelligence belongs. Not dismissed, not believed, held ready. The frontier is a teacher with rough hands. You learn by bruises. You drill as the sun crawls. March, halt, face about, spear, thrust, recover. In cold air the rhythm bites cleaner. The clack of hobnails unpacked, snow crisp as a metronome. Discipline is a furnace you carry inside. It warms less than a fire, but longer. As you move, you imagine the opposite camp. Men in trousers and furs, hands wrapped, spears strapped, making their own calculations about ice and distance and the patience of Roman sentries. They will weigh their hunger against your ditches. Their chief will weigh his honor against your horn. Noon brings a brief mercy of light. You stand at the tower with a partner and scan the tree line. Once, you would have sworn you saw a figure shift between trunks, but now you know snow can perform such tricks. Your partner, a Gaul-grown Roman by oath and pay, points to a far ridge and says, "If they come, it won't be there. Too open. Look where the wind scours the drifts low. That's where feet won't sink." You nod and tuck the advice beside your vinegar rubs and pebble warming tricks. Remember that pebble by the brazier. Another small survivorship to keep. Stories ripple through the ranks like heat. A century on the upper road claims a night visitor once crept close enough to slice a frozen thong and vanish, leaving a shield to drop with a bark of sound that woke the whole barack. Another tale insists a raiding party tried the palisade in sleet and failed because their grips froze on the wood. Perhaps true, perhaps not. Either way, each tale writes caution into your bones. The enemy is human. Winter is not. Sometimes your greatest advantage is the storm's indifference. By afternoon, you tramp out on a small patrol along the cleared swale outside the ditch. The wind has carved the snow into ribs and hollows. Your calves burn within 300 paces. You test the ice in a shallowed brook, hear the watery hiss beneath, and pull back. The landscape feels booby-trapped by the season itself. Behind you, camp geometry hums like a low chant, ditches catching drifts, walls breaking gusts, roads delivering you back to heat and porridge at day's end. You realize, not for the first time, that the grid is not just tidy, it's a survival engine. At sundown, the sky opens briefly, a sheet of cold brass. Smoke goes up in straight lines from the roofs, a small, stubborn census of fires. You eat in quiet, jaws working the same hard bread, the same salted strip. It is strangely satisfying to think the enemy chews something equally tough on the far side of the woods. War flattens menus. Hunger standardizes taste. Sleep approaches with its usual clumsy grace. Before you lie down, you step out once more to the gate. The snow squeaks. The river flashes dark under its pale crust. You whisper a tiny refrain you've learned to carry through nights. Breathe and ease, breathe and ease. The wind catches the edges and spreads them thin. Beyond the wall, a fox places delicate feet exactly where the crust will hold. Craft meets ice. Survival shakes hands. You turn back to the barack with one last, practical thought. Winter is an ally who respects no treaty. It slows you. It slows them. It punishes carelessness on either side. If the night stays clear, the temperature will drop hard before dawn. Clear nights invite risk-takers. Clear nights also make the crunch of approach unmistakable. You bank the ember, pull the sagum up, and let your eyes dim. The camp, like a great animal, settles its weight. Somewhere a horn tests a single note and goes quiet. For a moment, it feels as if the whole frontier pauses, roam, forest, river, sky, holding a breath that could turn into peace. But the worst was still to come. The fire is never enough. It starts well, crackling bravely, spitting sparks like tiny soldiers eager for battle. But the night is long, longer than we can endure. You sit near the brazier, palm extended, and feel the warmth fade with every minute, retreating like a legion outnumbered. Fire burns quickly when wood is scarce, and, on the frontier, wood is always scarce. The forest looms outside the ramparts, thick with pine and birch. Yet every tree is an enemy as much as a resource. Cut too many, and you expose the camp to ambush. March too far to gather wood, and your patrol risks arrows in the dark. So the fires are small, cautious, fed with more hesitation than zeal. A spark is comfort, a blaze is invitation. You hunch closer, cloak drawn tight, and watch the flames shrink. Smoke stings your eyes, but you welcome it. Smoke means warmth, even if fleeting. You think of Rome, where hearth fires burn freely, logs stacked without fear. Out here, the wood is measured like coin. A handful tonight, a handful tomorrow. Each ember is counted. A well-known fact. Roman camps calculated wood supplies as carefully as grain. Orders recorded daily fuel allowances, ensuring every contubernium had its ration. A curiosity, in some forts, archaeologists have found layers of charred pine cones, suggesting soldiers burned whatever they could gather. Cones, brush, even dung. Historians still argue whether legionaries truly rationed fires with discipline or whether men secretly stole fuel, risking punishment for the sake of a warmer night. The brazier sputters. A comrade stirs the coals with an iron rod, muttering at their stubborn glow. He adds a splinter of wood, waits, blows gently. For a moment the flames flare, shadows dance on the wall, and faces glow like carved masks. Then the fire sighs again, retreating. You watch the light dim and feel the night press closer. Sleep competes with cold. Too near the brazier, and smoke chokes you awake. Too far, and frost settles on your lashes. Men adjust constantly, shifting beds, tugging cloaks, muttering in irritation. The barack becomes a restless sea of movements. No one ever truly wins. There is a saying among veterans: fire promises, but never keeps. You remember hearing it your first winter, and tonight you understand. The fire begins strong, convincing, seductive. Then, by midnight, it betrays you. You wake in darkness, teeth chattering, breath pluming white. The brazier glows faintly like a dying star. Someone curses, someone shuffles forward to coax it back. The cycle repeats, endless, cruel. You rub your hands together, remembering tricks whispered by old campaigners. Place warm stones in your bedding. Sleep close to the coals while your comrade keeps watch. Lay cloaks over the brazier to trap heat before banking it. Desperation makes innovators of everyone. Yet even the cleverest tricks are only delays. The fire always fades. Outside, the wind carries with smoke like a beacon. Perhaps enemies smell it, perhaps not. Perhaps wolves do. You recall a night when howls answered every flare of sparks, circling the camp with eerie rhythm. The officers ordered fires doused, forcing the men into deeper cold. You learned then that warmth itself could betray you. Historians still argue whether frontier soldiers suffered frostbite in great numbers. The records are silent, perhaps embarrassed, perhaps indifferent. You know the truth in your own bones. Toes that never regain full feeling, fingers that stiffen too quickly. Fire delayed such wounds, but never erased them. Even in victory, the cold claimed its tribute. Your comrade adds the last scrap of wood. The flames flare once more, shadows leaping across the rafters, faces momentarily reborn in color. For a heartbeat, the barack feels alive. Then the glow wanes again, leaving only embers. You sigh, knowing dawn is still far away. There is humor, faint and stubborn. A soldier mutters that Rome should send not gold but forests. Another suggests carrying the Alps south, so every villa hearth burns with snow-fed wood. Laughter ripples, weak but real. The fire may fade, but laughter burns longer. You close your eyes, letting smoke drift over you. The warmth lingers for minutes, then slides away, but you have learned to trap even scraps of comfort. You turn on your side, cocooned in sagum, and think, perhaps tomorrow's patrol will bring better wood. Perhaps tomorrow's fire will burn longer. Perhaps. The word itself becomes warmth enough to drift into uneasy dreams. The embers pulse softly, red eyes in the ash. They promise nothing, yet still you trust them, because trust, like fire, is all you have on the frontier. Out here, survival is a workshop that never closes. When the wind lifts the roof boards and the frost thickens on the spearheads, you learn that the empire's best invention is not the road or the aqueduct. It's the soldier who refuses to give up. You look around the barack and see a museum of small solutions, each one rough, each one effective enough to win back an hour of comfort from the night. You begin with stones, not glamorous but loyal. You nest a ring of river stones along the rim of the brazier until they darken and hum with heat. One goes into your hands, another into your boots, a third wrapped in cloth at your belly like a tame sun. Remember the pebble trick from the fire circle. How warmth climbs the arm as if persuaded. It works again tonight, steady and plain. Then clay. Someone has molded a little stove from scavenged shards and river mud. A box with a mouth like a yawning mouse. Fed with chips of wood, it gulps quietly and exhales through a corner vent poked with a tent peg. Set it near the wall, and the board behind stays warm to the touch. Set it by the feet, and straw no longer feels like a thawing pond. The maker grins and shrugs when praised. Delabra and patience, he says, the legionary tool and the only real fuel you control. Leather follows. Boots and jerkins harden like pottery in this weather. You oil them, yes, but ingenuity asks for more. One veteran stitches a double tongue into his caligy, a little leather pocket to trap straw and keep it from wandering during the march. Another sews thin wool flaps along the ankle. Poor man's gaiters. A third lines his mitts with scraps, shaved from a torn saddlebag. None of it is regulation. All of it is Roman in spirit. A well-known fact. The legions carried field ovens wherever they went. Give 10 soldiers an afternoon and a little clay, and they will raise a fornax, a beehive belly that bakes bread and dries wet cloaks with a door propped open. Marching camps leave ghostly circles of these ovens in soil across provinces, a breadcrumb trail of persistence. You stand in the oven's blush and feel the kind of heat that makes men generous. Ingenuity creeps into the roofline, too. Someone lashes spare shields beneath the rafters as a false ceiling, the curve of the scuta catching the warm air and bouncing it downward. We've used shields as windbreaks before. Tonight, they become architecture. Another threadbare cloak is stretched drum-tight across the room, a canvas baffled to split drafts into weaker currents. The barack stops moaning like a ship in storm and starts whispering like a stage curtain. Curiosities multiply like sparks. A Gaulish recruit ties lumps of charcoal into a pouch and hangs it over his bedding, swearing it dries the air. A Briton sprinkles handfuls of crushed bracken into a straw, claiming the fern bends frost's attention elsewhere. A Greek tent mate folds layers of wool into a square breather he places over his mouth at sleep, so the air he exhales returns warmer to his face. You file these in the same mental drawer as vinegar rubs, garlic chewed slow, and heated pebbles. Not all provable, all worth trying. Historians still argue whether legionary tents, contubernia, on permanent frontiers were leather throughout, or if linen crept in for cost and convenience, and whether either material doubled and pitched low, meaningfully trapped warmth. You care about the debate only when your shift runs outside. Leather drips like a thawing roof. Linen snaps like a frozen sail. Both answer to wind, neither to comfort. If a second layer can be spared, you throw it over, cursing less, shivering less. Scholarship is a summer luxury. Tonight belongs to practice. You become a tinkerer of breath itself. Breathing deep into the belly, slow as a cart over ruts, you pull air past a damp cloth at your mouth to warm it. Breathe and ease. The refrain you've been using for sleep becomes a tool, a metronome for survival. Your heartbeat takes the cue. Your shoulders listen and lower. Even food invites invention. The gruel is thin again, but a ladle of rendered fat saved from the last lucky hunt transforms it into a small furnace. Someone has hollowed a crust of yesterday's bread and turned it into a bowl that doesn't steal heat from a porridge. Another has laid a lattice of thin twigs over the brazier so gloves and socks can steam dry without scorching. Your corner smells of lanolin and smoke, but also, miracle, of something like soup. Heat wants to rise. You trick it. A shelf of planks and spear shafts is slung from rafters with rawhide thongs, a drying loft for cloaks that doubles as a warm canopy over sleeping heads. Below, the straw stays drier. Above, the cloaks bake. Between, the air forgets to bite so hard. You lie down under the shelf and feel the difference at once, like stepping one room closer to summer. Water joins the lesson. You bury a skin in a pit lined with straw and broken tile, then cap it with a shield and pile snow on top. In the morning, the skin is cold, but pourable. A comrade asks why it works. You shrug. Because the ground and the shield are arguing about the temperature, and we stand between. Whatever the physics, the cup lifts and the throat thanks. Your hands crack, then mend under a coat of oil, then crack again. You stitch a scrap of wool into the wrist of your mitt, so it folds like a shutter over the palm when you grip a spear. Someone else weaves spare sling cords into a net that hugs the brazier pot and keeps it from tipping on uneven boards. Every new problem yields a knot, a loop, a patch, a trick. Every trick buys an hour. Hours become nights. Nights a winter. You think of the enemy. On the far side of the trees, they too improvise. Sleds on frozen marsh. Fur capes dyed with smoke. Snow-wise feet finding the safe crust. Their ingenuity sharpens yours. Competition is its own brazier. When talk turns soft around the coals, You collect the day's teachings like nails. The shield ceiling, the pebble sun, the bread bowl, the glove shutter, the loft, the pit. Each is small. Together, they build a house no blueprint could guess. Light humor flickers and then dims, as it always does now that the season has deepened. You save your grins for the moments when a tweak actually works on the first try. A last hand moves through the room, banking the embers to last until the hour before dawn. You press the hot stone into the hollow of your chest, tug the sagum to your chin, and listen to the barack settle into a patient hum. The wind prowls the walls, looking for an entrance. It finds none worth the trouble. Breathe and ease. You feel the refrain sink to the bones. Ingenuity has turned the night into a puzzle that can be solved, if not conquered. Sleep edges in politely, drawn by the promise of small victories waiting tomorrow. A tighter seam, a smarter vent, a warmer bowl. But the worst was still to come. The day has been long, filled with drills and frozen mud and patrols that seem to lead only from one snowbank to another. But tonight, when you return to the barack, a murmur spreads that brightens even the darkest corner. Letters have arrived. A courier has braved the passes, trudged through frost and forest, carrying words wrapped in waxed leather. For once, you forget the cold. The Optio calls names. Each man waits, trying not to reveal his hunger, but eyes flicker toward the small bundle he holds. A scrap of wax tablet, a folded sheet of papyrus, even a piece of parchment torn from a merchant's stock. Anything is treasure now. Your name is spoken, and your hand rises before you even realize. The tablet is pressed into your palm, and for a moment the world feels warmer than the brazier. You retreat to your straw bed, shielding the letter as if it were gold. Your comrades do the same. Some tear theirs open instantly, lips moving, eyes racing over each carved line. Others hesitate, holding the message close to their chest, savoring anticipation longer than the taste itself. You rest the tablet on your knee, tracing the grooves of the stylus with your finger before you dare read. A well-known fact: soldiers wrote home often, and families wrote back when they could. Hundreds of tablets from Vindolanda, in northern Britain, survive: shopping lists, birthday invitations, affectionate words. They prove the army was not only spears and shields, but also gossip, longing, and love scribbled onto wood. A curiosity: one of the most famous surviving letters is from a woman inviting her friend to a birthday party on the frontier. Imagine, cakes and laughter planned while snow pressed against the wall. Historians still argue how common literacy truly was among rank-and-file soldiers. Did every man write his own hand, or did scribes earn coin by shaping emotions into letters? The debate lingers, like an echo across centuries. You begin to read. The stylus lines are shallow but clear. Your sister speaks of harvest, grain piled high, goats fattened, neighbors complaining that rain ruined half their figs. The world she describes feels impossibly far. You smell only straw and smoke here, but the words carry the faint aroma of figs you once plucked yourself. You smile. The lines falter toward the end, growing rushed. We pray for you. Come home when you can. The children shout your name when they play. You close your eyes, hearing their laughter as if carried on the wind through the barack door. Around you, the room hums with similar journeys. One man grins foolishly, letter pressed to his lips. Another stares hard, blinking too quickly, trying to hide tears that the cold cannot explain. A third curses cheerfully. His wife has scolded him for not sending money faster. Laughter bubbles, even reprimands are blessings, because they mean someone thought of you. The letters are read aloud too, shared like loaves of bread. A comrade with shaky literacy asks another to read his words, and soon half the contubernium listens in. A mother's advice about wool socks becomes a communal joke. A child drawing scratched clumsily into the wax earns roars of delight. For a night, the barack feels like a village square instead of a garrison. But not every man receives a letter. You see them, faces tight, eyes pretending not to glance toward the lucky few. Their silence weighs heavier than snow. Some mutter that their families live too far, that roads are blocked. Others stay quiet. In the darkest corner, one man sharpens his knife slowly, staring at the wood shavings on the floor. Loneliness can cut deeper than frost. You fold your tablet carefully, slide it under your straw, close to your chest. Words are warmth. They're also fuel for dreams. Tonight, you know your sleep will bring not snow or hunger, but fig trees and children shouting names. Later, as the brazier dwindles, stories emerge. One soldier remembers how his father used to tuck letters in wine jars, sealing them with pitch so they traveled safe from damp. Another insists letters from the South always smelled faintly of olive oil, no matter the scribe. A third tells of a comrade who received a blank wax tablet once, sent by mistake or as cruel joke. Historians still puzzle over such fragments. Your own stylus lies ready by your side. You will answer tomorrow, carving small grooves into wax with fingers that tremble from both cold and emotion. You will tell of snowdrifts high as men, of fires that die too quickly, of vinegar rubbed into skin, of laughter shared despite all of it. You will soften the edges, hide the worst, brighten the rest. Because letters travel not only across distance, but across fear. And you would rather send warmth than chill. Sleep comes slower tonight, delayed by the glow inside your chest. You turn on your side, sagum pulled high, and whisper the lines again, as if repetition will keep them alive. Figs, goats, prayers, children. The barack fades. Outside, the frontier remains cold and silent. But inside, words blaze longer than fire. The storm has passed. Morning arrives with a sky so clear it almost hurts to look at, a dome of pale glass stretched over the frontier. No snow falls. No wind howls. The silence feels immense, like a pause between breaths. You step out of the barack, and the crunch of your kalagi in the snow sounds louder than a trumpet. Every soldier stops, listening to his own footsteps, as if the earth itself were holding its tongue. It is strange, this quiet. After weeks of gales battering the walls and snow pelting the roofs, your ears almost ache at the absence of sound. The forest beyond the ramparts is still, its branches heavy with white. Even the crows stay perched, black dots against the frozen canopy. It feels as though the world has been emptied, as though only the camp remains alive. The silence is not peace. It is suspense. Men murmur about ambushes and raids, whether enemies wait for this very lull to approach under cover of calm. A well-known fact. Ancient writers often describe how northern tribes timed attacks for unexpected weather breaks, seizing moments when Roman vigilance wavered. A curiosity, one Vindolanda tablet records a soldier remarking on a day so silent after storms that he swore the gods had hidden the world. Historians still argue whether such descriptions were exaggerations or true psychological weight carried by men who lived in constant tension. You feel the weight yourself now. Each sound is magnified. The clatter of a dropped bucket, the snap of a cloak in the breeze, the bark of a dog near the stables. Even your own breath fogs too loudly, curling into air that refuses to move. You tug your sagum closer and tell yourself the silence is not threat but gift. Yet the back of your neck prickles all the same. Inside the camp, chores continue. Fires are coaxed back to life, bread is baked, drills resume. But all of it happens at a slower rhythm, as if men are cautious not to break the quiet too harshly. A hammer on an anvil echoes across the whole fort, each strike sounding like a warning bell. The optio barks an order and then mutters an apology under his breath, embarrassed by the way his voice carried. Even officers, usually so eager to project authority, lower their tones. The barack feels odd too. Without the storm's roar or the drip of melting snow, the creaks of wood beams stand out. You can hear a comrade's quill scratching in the corner, the faint crackle of straw as men shift in their beds. One man swears he heard the snow itself sigh when the sun touched it. You laugh, but not too loudly. In this silence, laughter feels almost dangerous, a spark thrown into still air. Yet there is comfort as well. You march on the Via Praetoria, boots clattering sharp and clean against the stone path. For once, the road feels like a true Roman road again, not a muddy trough. The geometry of camp, straight lines, right angles, ordered streets, seems to stand taller in the absence of chaos. You realize how much storms blur the world, and how silence sharpens it back into clarity. By midday, the sun casts a pale gold, and the snow begins to crust. Shadows lengthen, crisp and perfect. Soldiers linger in the warmth, faces tilted upward like worshippers. The barack doors are flung open to let stale smoke drift away. Children of camp followers chase each other near the granary, their shrieks breaking the silence like birdsong. For an hour, it feels like reprieve, like the gods have handed the garrison a fragile holiday. But silence can turn heavy quickly. Without wind to mask thoughts, the mind races. You think of home, of letters read the night before, of figs and goats and names shouted in play. You wonder if silence lies there too, or if city streets bustle with the noise you half remember. The contrast is sharp, almost cruel. Your comrade mutters that the silence makes him hear ghosts. He swears the footsteps of dead comrades echo in the clear air, louder than when they lived. Another soldier nods grimly, saying quiet nights bring dreams that storms at least kept away. You shrug, but you understand. In the hush, memory grows teeth. Historians debate whether such psychological strain was recognized officially. Some argue commanders encouraged music, chants, or drills to break silence before it bent men's minds. Others think silence was considered discipline itself, proof of Roman endurance. You suspect both are true. Discipline is a shield, but even shields can be too heavy if carried too long. The evening falls gently, the sky painted violet and orange. The campfires flare brighter against the stillness, their smoke rising in thin, unwavering columns. You sit near one, cup of broth in hand, and realize how loud the crackle sounds, how warm each bubble of steam feels. Fire thrives in silence, commanding attention without competition. You finish your broth slowly, savoring the way it fills the belly. The barack grows hushed again, men lying down, straw shifting under sagums. Outside, the forest waits, black and motionless. You listen one last time before sleep. No storm, no enemy, only stillness. And that is perhaps the hardest test of all. Storms you can fight, enemies you can see. But silence? Silence asks you to battle your own thoughts. You close your eyes, repeating the old refrain, breathe and ease, breathe and ease. The quiet listens with you, endless and indifferent. The silence of clear days eventually gives way to new obstacles. When storms pass and skies open, the landscape does not become kind. It becomes cunning. Roads that once carried legions with the steady rhythm of hobnails now turn to glassy traps. Rivers, the lifelines of trade and movement, put on deceptive masks of ice. You march out of camp with your contubernium and learn quickly that winter hides its dangers beneath a polished surface. The Via Praetoria stretches before you, the backbone of Rome inside the fort. But beyond the gates, where Roman order ends, the road becomes ruts frozen hard, glistening with a thin glaze. Each step rings out. Calligi, built for grip on stone and soil, skate clumsily when frost clings too thick. Men stumble, cursing, catching themselves on spears. The pace slows to half. A mile feels like 3. What was once a tool of empire, a straight road cutting through wilderness, now feels like a trap designed by the gods to humble soldiers. A well-known fact: Roman roads were marvels of engineering, layered with stone and gravel to endure centuries. But in winter, ice made even the strongest pavement treacherous. A curiosity, archaeologists in the Alps have found grooves in stone where carts must have skidded, their iron wheels scraping as they slid on frozen surfaces. Historians still argue whether legions paused transport entirely in deep winter or risked the gamble of slow caravans over icy paths. The debate lingers because the evidence shows both courage and caution. You press onward. The road stretches arrow straight, yet each step demands concentration. Soldiers spread out, giving one another room in case of slips. Pack mules stumble too, braying, nostrils steaming in cold air. One mule goes down, load spilling into the snow. The men rush to lift it, muttering prayers, because losing supplies on the frontier is no small inconvenience. It is risk to the entire garrison. The animal staggers upright, hooves trembling, and the march resumes with a new wariness. Then comes the river. At first glance, it looks solid, a smooth sheet of white-blue glass stretching from bank to bank. A trick of beauty. You know better. Rivers are never truly still. Water moves beneath, patient, searching for weakness in the ice. A veteran steps forward, spear in hand, and taps the surface. The sound is dull, solid. He nods. Another soldier follows, then another. Soon the line snakes across, figures small against the pale expanse. Halfway across, the groaning begins. The ice sings in a low, dreadful voice, vibrating up through boots and bones. Men freeze in place, eyes darting, breath held. A crack appears, spider-thin but long, darting away like lightning trapped underfoot. Shouts rise. The centurion calls for calm, steady steps, no sudden movements. Each foot place feels like a wager. By the time you reach the opposite bank, your chest aches from the breath you forgot to release. Some are not so lucky in other crossings. Tales ripple through the ranks of men, vanishing into black water, armor, dragging them down faster than comrades could reach. Others recall carts broken through ice, grain sacks swallowed by currents. To fall into a winter river is to dance with death itself. The cold does not merely sting. It seizes, locking limbs, stealing air. Even if rescued, many never recover. You glance back at the shimmering surface and vow silently never to trust its calm again. Historians argue whether legionaries learned from locals better ways to read ice. Some suggest Germanic guides showed Romans how to test thickness with poles, how to listen for the pitch of cracks, how to spot patches glossed thin by underground springs. Others claim arrogance blinded commanders, who demanded the march continue regardless of warnings. You, standing on the far bank with your heart still racing, know that pride has no place on a frozen river. Night marches bring other dangers. Roads hidden under snow disguise potholes and stones. Wagons creak, axles groaning in the bitter air. A single break can halt a column for hours. Soldiers grumble, stamping feet to stay warm as repairs crawl. Even torchlight betrays you, reflected blindingly off ice. Dazzling eyes until shadows dance at the edges. The march feels endless, a chess match against terrain. And yet, these roads and rivers remain lifelines. Supplies must pass, orders must travel, legions must move. Rome cannot afford paralysis in winter. You tell yourself the same each time boots slip, each time the ice groans, each time a mule balks at the path. Discipline carries you farther than courage. Step by careful step, the empire advances. When you return to camp, feet raw and shoulders aching, you look at the road behind the walls with new eyes. Inside, it gleams solid, sure, a Roman promise of order. Outside, it is only stone and ice, as fickle as weather. The line between empire and wilderness is not measured in walls, but in the confidence that tomorrow you will step onto those same treacherous roads again. You lie on your straw that night, sagum pulled close, and dream of roads warm and dry, lined with cypress and dust. Then you wake to the whistle of wind through the palisade and remember, here, winter builds the road as much as Rome ever did. And tomorrow, you'll walk again. The cold does not care about calendars. Snow falls whether Saturn is honored or forgotten, and the wind howls whether sacrifices are offered or not. And yet, here on the edge of empire, the legions insist. Time must be marked, festivals must be observed, joy must not surrender. Because if you let the season erase celebration, then winter has conquered you more completely than any enemy ever could. The first festival that cuts through the frost is Saturnalia. In Rome, the city glitters with torches, laughter tumbles down every street, and masters serve meals to their slaves. Out here, far from marble and forum, Saturnalia is smaller, but perhaps even more precious. The barracks hum with anticipation for weeks beforehand. You hear men whispering about dice games, about crude gifts prepared in secret, about the chance, just for a moment, to invert the order of things. On the chosen night, discipline loosens its iron grip. A centurion, normally stern as stone, sits on a stool while a common soldier wears his crested helmet, barking mock orders. The whole Cantaburnium roars with laughter as their centurion orders drills of absurdity. Raise your cups higher, or march to the brazier and back, but only with one boot. The real officers watch from the shadows, pretending not to smile. For a few hours, hierarchy bends, and the Baroque breathes differently, lighter, freer. Gift-giving is simple but heartfelt. A wax tablet smooth clean, offered with a grin. A small wooden horse whittled by candlelight. A handful of dried figs saved from rations, pressed into a friend's palm like treasure. A well-known fact, Saturnalia in Rome involved the giving of sigillaria, little figurines of clay or wax. Out here, far from workshops, ingenuity replaces clay with whatever is at hand. Pebbles carved into dice, scraps of leather tied into charms. A curiosity, one fragmentary tablet from Vindolanda hints at gifts of feathers and beads exchanged by soldiers, humble tokens that still carried laughter. Historians still argue whether these gifts were symbols of true camaraderie or merely distractions tolerated by officers to soothe restless men. You living it know they are both. Food is shared too, though meager. The cook manages to slip extra fat into the porridge, making it rich for a single night. A jug of wine, watered thinner than a whisper, is warmed by the brazier and passed around. Each sip feels decadent, more precious than amphory in Rome. Someone jokes that the gods themselves could not tell the difference between this thin frontier brew and Falernian, if only they drank it in such cold. Laughter spills, and for a moment even the frost seems to hesitate at the door. Then comes the solstice, the longest night. The men gather in the open yard despite the snow, stamping their feet, huddling close as a great fire is built from carefully hoarded wood. It is a calculated extravagance, a gift from officers who know morale burns as brightly as timber. Flames leap high, orange against black sky, and all eyes tilt upward. The Optio lifts his hands and proclaims the unconquered sun, Sol Invictus, will rise again. Cups of wine and even handfuls of melted snow are raised in toast. The night is endless, but the ritual is defiance. Stories follow the fire. A Gaulish recruit recalls evergreen wreaths hung in his village to prove life still endures under snow. A Syrian archer tells of lamps burning through the night in his homeland, flickering stars brought down to earth. A Spaniard sings a fragment of a winter hymn, his voice low but strong, reminding everyone that the empire stretches far beyond this icy ditch. You listen, warmed not only by flame, but by the idea that Rome's strength is not just stone or steel. It is the blending of traditions, the weaving of memory across provinces. In the Baroque later, The air still hums with celebration. Dice clatter, songs rise. A man recites poetry from memory, stumbling on lines but grinning anyway. Another carves crude faces into bits of wax, handing them around as mock idols. Sleep comes late that night, but when it comes, it is gentler. The dream of a rising sun, of laughter echoing through snow, lingers in every man's chest. Historians continue to debate whether Roman festivals on the frontier were permitted wholeheartedly or only tolerated in moderation. Some argue they undermined discipline, that loosened ranks invited danger. Others suggest they were essential, a safety valve against despair. You suspect the truth is simple. Without these brief bursts of joy, the legions might have fractured under the endless press of frost. The days after festivals prove it. Men rise with easier smiles, quarrels quiet, shoulders straighten. The cold remains the same, biting, merciless. But now each soldier carries a spark that outlasts the fire. Saturnalia and the solstice fade into routine, but their echoes are stronger than the storms outside. You remember a final gesture from that week. A comrade slipped you a clay figure he had shaped in secret, a little man with crooked arms and no face. For luck, he muttered, embarrassed. You still keep it tucked under your bedding. When the fire fades too quickly, when silence presses too heavily, you press the figure in your hand and remember that warmth can be carved even from mud. That night, as the barack settles and snow drifts against the wall, you close your eyes with a strange peace. Saturnalia, solstice, small gifts, shared songs. They are not grand feasts or golden temples. They are embers. And embers, are enough to light a night. You whisper the refrain, breathe, and breathe, and ease, and feel the frost pause outside the door. For tonight, at least, you have one. The cold does not only steal comfort, it weakens the body until every cough feels like an omen. On the frontier, when winter is deepest, illness walks the camp like an unseen sentinel. You wake one morning to the sound of rasping breath, the kind that rattles straw mats and silences conversation. No wound, no spear thrust, only a fever rising like a secret fire. And yet, men fear it more than arrows. The barack air is already heavy with smoke from the brazier, with damp from cloaks that never fully dry. In such air, sickness spreads easily. One cough becomes 2, then 10. A soldier who stood in formation yesterday now shivers under his sagum, face pale, lips cracked. The optio frowns, but says nothing. There are no spare men. Discipline demands attendance, even when lungs refuse. A well-known fact. Roman writers recorded that more soldiers were lost to disease than to battle. Campaigns in Gaul, in Dacia, in Britain all tell the same story. Fevers flux, coughs that turn into graves. A curiosity, archaeologists at Vindolanda uncovered writing tablets mentioning requests for warm clothing and socks, perhaps not only for comfort, but to stave off illness. Historians still argue what exactly plagued the frontiers in winter. Influenza? Pneumonia? Tuberculosis? The words did not exist then as they do now, but the symptoms whisper across centuries. You watch your comrades fight the cold, not with swords, but with remedies half practical, half desperate. Garlic is chewed raw, its sting meant to banish sickness from the throat. Vinegar is mixed with water, swirled in cups, swallowed slowly, as if the sour bite could cleanse lungs. One soldier swears by rubbing goose fat into his chest. Another ties a charm of bone and thread around his neck, muttering that it pleases the household gods. You try each trick, not because you believe, but because doing nothing feels worse. When fever strikes, the barack changes. Men gather straw around the sick, trying to build warmth. Water is melted from snow, ladled into trembling hands. Someone hums an old hymn to Mars, not for battle, but for strength. Yet the camp is not gentle forever. If illness lingers too long, work must continue, guard posts filled, drills maintained. A man too weak to rise is left behind, wrapped in his cloak, entrusted to fortune. You glance at him when marching out and tell yourself he will recover. Sometimes he does. Sometimes his bed is empty when you return. The fear of contagion makes even hardened soldiers whisper. You see men tug scarves higher, avoid sharing cups, shift straw further from the sick. Comradeship collides with survival. One evening, a man coughs blood into his hand, and silence falls heavier than snow. The brazier's glow seems colder after that. Historians debate whether Roman military medicine was more advanced than legend admits. Some argue that Army Medici had real skill, setting bones, sewing wounds, prescribing herbal poultices. Others say their knowledge of fevers was little more than ritual, that winter claimed men no matter what herbs boiled in bronze pots. You, standing with cold water in one hand and a prayer in the other, know both views contain truth. The Baroque tells its own stories. One soldier remembers his father using honey to soothe throats. Another swears onion poultices can draw fever away. A Greek auxiliary quotes Hippocrates, describing balance of humors disrupted by cold. A Spaniard laughs bitterly, insisting only wine ever worked, though none is left strong enough to matter. Each man becomes a healer for a night, but the sickness remains stubborn. Sometimes the camp buries its dead in silence, the ground too frozen for ceremony. Bodies are carried out at dawn, cloaks wrapped tight, laid in shallow snow pits until thaw allows a grave. You watch such burials and feel the cruelty of cold sharpened by grief. Death in battle at least earns a horn and a speech. Death in winter is quiet, embarrassed, muffled by frost. Yet not all is despair. Recovery happens too. A comrade burns with fever for days, muttering nonsense, then rises suddenly as if the illness has grown bored. His voice is hoarse, but his grin broad. The whole contubernium cheers, louder than for any victory drill. Hope spreads as quickly as coughs. You cling to those moments, proof that not every shadow lingers. You lie awake at night, listening to the mix of snores and coughs, the creak of straw, the hiss of embers. You wonder how Rome itself smells in winter. Does the city also reek of vinegar and sweat? Do families there pray over fevers the same way you do here? The empire may stretch endless miles, but in sickness, every man becomes the same. Fragile, shivering, reaching for warmth. You pull your sagum tighter, whispering the refrain, breathe, and ease, as if rhythm alone can keep lungs strong. Outside, frost claws at the walls. Inside, you count the breaths of your comrades, grateful for each one that continues through the night. By now you have learned what winter teaches every soldier. Survival is a craft. It is a set of motions repeated until they become calm. Warming a pebble, banking a brazier, tying cloth around aching feet, listening for the timbre of ice. When you rise before dawn and sweep snow from the threshold, you are practicing more than habit. You are writing a manual that other armies will copy, sometimes knowingly, sometimes as if remembering a lesson they never realized you taught. Later centuries will borrow your geometry. The camp you stamped into frozen ground, ditches, rampart for gates, a spine of road, will be reborn again and again. A well-known fact. Medieval war columns raised temporary rectangles eerily like yours, and early modern armies drilled into the science of encampment, laying out streets and latrines and fuel dumps with Roman tidiness. A curiosity whispers through engineers' notebooks. Some officers sketched Hadrian's Wall and frontier forts as models for winter redoubts, marveling that order could blunt the wind itself. Historians still argue how much of that continuity was direct inheritance and how much was rediscovery. Did manuals preserve Roman logic, or did cold climates force the same conclusions from different minds? Either way, The ground keeps remembering the grid. Your layering becomes doctrine. Wool beneath, leather above, a cloak tight over all. Later soldiers call it onion dressing, and the phrase marches across eras. They learn that trapped air is a garment in itself. That moisture is betrayal. Socks multiply. Boots close their seams. Leggings are no longer mocked as barbarian, but praised as prudent. The bracky that once drew smirks becomes a uniform article where snow owns the roads. In one century, it is fulled wool. In another, felted liners and rubberized canvas. In another still, quilted synthetics. Different words, same logic. You could strip the centuries and recognize the silhouette. A human wrapped in layers of thoughtful air. Fires, too, become a science of patience. You learn to feed embers like a careful banker. Later armies will ration fuel with tables, not just instinct. Field stoves appear, small iron bellies that do what your clay mouse stove began. Chimneys snake through canvas, then tin pipes through board huts. Vents take the smoke and leave the heat. In trench lines and winter billets, soldiers place hot stones. Later, bottles, later still, tins of water, embedding the way you tuck pebbles into your sagum. Warmth, portable and humble, travels by hand from age to age. Your food, wisdom walks forward. Porridge with fat becomes a doctrine of calories per hour. Salted strips become preserved tins, then packets, then bars. Commanders learn the old Roman truth that supply is strategy, wearing an apron. Grain and wood are spears by other names. They write ration tables, design insulated panniers, schedule fuel convoys as if scheduling hope. And always, in the cold, someone remembers to ladle heat as much as flavor. A bowl that warms the palms is part of the meal. Even your small inventions echo. The shield ceiling you slung below the rafters appears later as double roofs of canvas, as snow sheds nailed over huts, as baffles and windbreaks and vestibules cut from spare cloth. Your drying loft becomes a rack above trench braziers. Your bread bowl returns as a heat-sparing mug. Your glove shutter evolves into mittens layered like tiny cloaks. The barack becomes a laboratory whose results travel farther than any trumpet call. On marches, your caution over ice becomes the professional's instinct. Test the river, distribute weight, listen for the low groan that climbs the bones. You walk step by measured step. Future columns do the same with poles and ropes and arithmetic. They learn to read wind-sculpted drifts the way your gall taught you. Look where the crust holds, where the scouring bites thin. A glossary of winter grows, sastrugi, frazzle, hoarfrost, but beneath the vocabulary lives your original verb, endure. There are darker lessons as well. You saw how illness patrols the bunks more faithfully than any officer. Later winter armies learn hygiene the way you learned it, by losing men and vowing never again. Latrines walk downhill, not uphill. Water gets boiled even when time snarls. Bedding is aired in brittle sunlight even when fingers sting. Medici become surgeons, poultices become protocols, but the foundation is the same stubborn sentence. Keep the air moving, keep the straw dry, keep the body fed. You taught by example that ceremony can be rationed without disappearing. Saturnalia scaled to a barack becomes, in later winters, carols in a dugout, a lantern set in a snow wall, a letter read aloud to 10 men who pretend not to cry. Festivals become field-adapted, quiet, brief, stubborn, so spirits do not splinter where glassy roads already threaten ankles. Your toast to a returning sun becomes a timeline marker, a whispered promise. Just hold until the light lengthens. And the debates continue, even as the centuries pile on. Did winter truly pause campaigns? Or did the bold turn frost into ally? Caesar pressed across snow. So did others far later, gambling that cold would cloak their advance and slow their foe. Historians still argue whether winter teaches caution or tempts ambition. You know how the argument feels inside the ribs. Some nights the cold counsels patience. Other nights it sharpens a blade of opportunity, so bright it is hard not to reach for it. There is humility in the way knowledge moves. Few later soldiers will know your name, yet they will know your habits. They will bank fires low at first watch, hang cloaks where heat pools, set sentries to stamp feet, and sing a rough measure to outpace sleep. They will layer socks and guard the rim of a pot like a gold plate. They will step on rivers with that particular silence all ice understands. They will press a small token into a friend's palm before curfew. A carved sliver, a scrap of ribbon, a joke on paper, and feel the temperature rise inside the chest by a degree you cannot measure. Sometimes legacy is a shouted rule. More often, it is the quiet way a hand moves around a flame. Tonight, as the barack settles, you think of those later camps strung across maps you will never see, tents stitched against stars, huts rowed like books on a shelf, trenches ribbed with duckboards, jungles where damp is winter reimagined. You imagine a soldier hundreds of years from now cupping a tin over a small stove, palms hovering exactly as yours hover above a brazier. If you could speak across the years, you would tell him what you tell yourself. Keep heat where breath is, keep cheer where hands meet, keep geometry where fear wanders. Breathe and ease. The refrain is carried farther than any banner. The wind fingers the wall. Your ember blinks, then steadies. In the quiet, you understand the simplest lesson you've been writing for anyone who will read. Winter is a teacher, but it prefers notebooks built of habit. You close your eyes around the warmth you have earned and prepare for one more dawn, one more page, one more chance to leave small instructions for the next pair of cold hands. But there is still one night left to cross. The night has grown heavy. The snow outside lies deep and unbroken, a pale blanket across the frontier. The barack has settled into stillness, the kind of quiet where every crackle of the brazier sounds like a heartbeat. You sit close to the fading fire, sagum wrapped tightly around your shoulders, and you realize this circle, soldiers, comrades, friends, is not just about survival. It is about remembrance. The fire glows red, not bright, but steady. Sparks float upward like tiny stars, vanishing against the rafters. Around you, men murmur softly or drift in a sleep, their breath rising in small clouds. You watch them and think of the months behind, the endless storms, the rivers that cracked beneath your feet, the nights when sickness crept into the barack, the days when laughter returned through festivals and letters. Every hardship, every small joy has gathered here like logs stacked for the same fire. A well-known fact: Roman legions were not just armies but communities. They built roads, towns, and walls that endured long after banners fell. A curiosity: archaeologists sometimes uncover children's shoes inside frontier forts, proof that families lived alongside soldiers even in harsh winters. Historians still argue whether the frontier was only suffering or also a place of strange, quiet life. You sit here breathing the smoke and warmth, and know the answer lies somewhere in between. The frontier was hardship, yes, but it was also home, if only for a season. The campfire circle reminds you that even in the coldest places, stories gather like sparks. You recall the soldier who swore garlic kept sickness away, the Gaul who read the snow like a book, the Syrian who toasted the unconquered sun, the friend who pressed a crooked clay figurine into your hand for luck. These are not grand histories carved in stone. They are small embers, and yet, together, they warm more than you expected. Outside, the wind stirs, brushing the palisade with icy fingers. But it does not enter. The walls hold. The shields overhead catch the draft. The straw beneath you muffles the frost. For tonight, you are safe. You lean back and close your eyes. The silence is no longer heavy. It is gentle, like a thick quilt laid over the world. You feel yourself drifting, thoughts loosening, as if your mind itself were embers slowly fading into ash. You let the rhythm of your breath guide you. Breathe and ease, breathe and ease. In that rhythm, memory folds into dream. You see the frozen river again, but this time it is solid, carrying you across with no cracks. You see the barack, but now it is glowing with infinite fire. You see your comrades, each wrapped in warmth, each smiling in their sleep. The frontier does not vanish, but softens. What once threatened now simply holds you, like snow supporting its own silence. Now the story slows, the words stretching out like the last lines of song. The fire before you is low, glowing softly, but it is enough. Enough to light your hands, enough to guide you through this last hour of wakefulness. Let the walls stand firm in your imagination. Let the snow lie still beyond them. Let the silence widen, not as a threat, but as a comfort. You are wrapped in your cloak, safe within the circle, and nothing more is required. The soldiers around you are drifting deeper, their breaths becoming waves that roll slowly, one after another. Their faces ease, their hands unclench. The barack becomes a vessel rocking gently on a sea of sleep. And you are part of it now. Breathe slowly. In, out. Each breath a step farther from the cold. Each breath a step closer to rest. The lessons of winter settle around you like falling snow. Endurance, patience, invention, camaraderie. They do not press hard. They land gently, feather-light, covering you without weight. You are held by them, sheltered by them, cradled by them. Imagine the fire dimming until it is only a glow. Imagine the camp silent, the stars steady above. Imagine your body sinking into straw, into earth, into warmth that does not end. And as the final spark fades, so too does the need to hold on. You can let go now. The night will carry you. The story will carry you. The dream will carry you. Sleep slowly. Sleep safely. Sleep deeply. End of script. Sweet dreams.